This is Dana Hersey. 3 months ago, he barged into the Lincoln Street Grill and began an incredible success story. Since that fateful moment in March, such formidable foes as WVBF Radio, Amtrak, and the Internal Revenue Service have fallen before Hersey's rampage, and now the cry, "We don't knock," strikes fear in the hearts of even the most powerful Boston institution.
I am with my friend Dana Hersey. If you watch the Film Detective, you no doubt know his voice. And if you're from the Boston area, you may remember him as the voice of WSBK TV 38. He was the host of a beloved Boston institution known as the Movie Loft. But we will not talk about that now. Instead, in honor of New Year's Eve, I want to discuss Dana's other contribution to the fine arts. That was his hosting of the annual New Year's Eve Three Stooges Marathon.
This Saturday night, TV 38 invites you to ring in the new year with our third annual Three Stooges Marathon. 6 hours of Moe, Larry, Curly, and yes, even a few shemps to help you say hello to 1989.
Now, Dana, I want you to take us back. How did those marathons get started? Whose idea was it? And who was your favorite stooge?
Well, you have to go way back, actually. I used to do a show called Ask the Manager. And on that show, we got letters from people out in TV land. And the general manager of the show, in fact, originally on that program, all you saw was my back because I was representing the viewer. So I'd read these letters from viewers, and then the general manager would read the letters, would answer the letters.
Dan, you're intelligent, and at times verbose. But with all those children, you probably don't get a chance to talk much at all.
Well, some of those letters were written in crayon. I mean, they were pretty simple stuff. And a lot of them actually referred to the Three Stooges, many of them quite serious about it. And I can remember, one person continually asking for Larry in the dishes, one of the episodes. And why aren't there more Curlies? Why do we have to put up with that great Curly Shemp? There was always this controversy between how many Shemps they had and how many Curlies. I know you have more Curlies. Why aren't you just showing Curlies? Or why aren't you showing more Curlies? So there was this enormous controversy over that. And so Three Stooges, actually, in the early days of TV 38, were kind of seminal to our entire lineup, I mean, we had Hogan's Heroes. That was one of our biggies, But we became a superstation. And one of the early superstations, in fact. And that was because we were carried on all of these community antenna systems throughout New England and also into New York State as well. Albany, I think Syracuse had us. And that was directly responsible because we had Bruins and the Red Sox was responsible for us being all those CATVs. But as a result of that, we had a much greater audience than you would normally have if just you were Boston station. I mean, remember TBS? That was, I think, the first superstation. We were the kind of superstation of New England. We were carried on all of this, not because of the Movie Loft or any of our other programming, but literally because of our Bruins and Red Sox coverage.
I like to know.
Eddie, can you see this? You might want to zoom into this a little. You see, this is a Red Sox schedule, but they're kind enough to have Dana on the cover. Oh, and a former Ask the Manager co-host. As a matter of fact, his picture is here as well. Mr. Sean McDonough, Bob Montgomery there.
But as a result of that, all of our other programming was exposed as well, and people used to love the Three Stooges. So you've met Henry Dane. I think my producer, Henry Dane, he actually was a promotions manager, one of the most talented promotion managers I have ever worked with. In fact, the most talented I've ever worked with. Very creative mind, always thought out of the box on everything. And he decided one day, hey, what we should do is for New Year's Eve, just, throw up the Stooges and just keep on going for like this huge 24-hour marathon of the Three Stooges. And you have to remember that January 1st for a local television station there are no ads. I mean, because after Christmas, immediately your avails, as they call them, drop to zero. So we had a lot of time to fill, and we wanted to do something for our viewers and such. So because so many of our viewers loved the Three Stooges, we decided that we put on Three Stooges Marathon. And that throughout the years then began to build. We used to make it bigger and bigger. We would include a lot of the comedians that were in the Boston area. There used to be a Chinese restaurant. I don't know if you ever heard about it. The Ding Ho restaurant.
Yeah, in Cambridge, right?
That's right. The Ding Ho in Cambridge. What a wild place that was. And they had a comedy place there as well. And they have an open mic night. And I saw Lenny Clark used to host the open mic night. And there were people like Barry Crimmins was in there. Stephen Wright came up there. I saw him before anybody had ever seen him on, on stage. And some of the great comedians that now working in television and in radio were started at the Ding Ho. So we forged a relationship with those comedians, and those comedians were sometimes involved in our, quite often, in fact, involved in vignettes that we did in between the Three Stooges Marathon and that program.
A dimension of sight, a dimension of sound. A dimension of mind. It's the area we call the Brighto Zone. Sports.
Hey kid, our game announcer's going to the network, so we're gonna give you an audition. Call the Bruins practice tonight at the Garden. Better give it your best shot.
Whoopee! Yes! Consider, if you will, a brief shining moment in the backstage world of television. A big break for a rising young sportscaster. His dream job within reach. Unless things happen to go wrong, as they often do in the Brighto Zone.
This is clearly one of the most exciting drills I have ever seen. Look at these guys work, will you? They're unbelievable. Oh wow, look, here comes Donato and Hughes. They're breaking in all alone. Oh! Wow, look at him go. Oh, he's got a great nose to the net.
So you never considered doing a Hogan's Heroes marathon or any, it was the Stooges from the start.
Well, actually, funny that you mentioned, I think there was some talk about that at one time. I know we did Marx Brothers marathon. We did that 2 or 3 years, I think. We had a bunch of Marx Brothers movies, and we just, or as many as we had, they didn't make that many, I suppose, but we just kept running those on a loop as well. But by far, the most popular marathon was the Three Stooges Marathon.
Also, what I remember was that it wasn't always on New Year's Eve. Sometimes it might have been Christmas Eve or a couple of days after Christmas. It was, it seemed like it took a while for it to become the New Year's Eve staple. And I was looking at some old archives, Boston Globe TV listings, and there were a couple of years where they would show it more than once during a couple of week periods.
I don't know. You're probably right. I mean, that's what it says. I only remember it as being the New Year's Eve thing.
The Stooges were so beloved that New Year's Eve wasn't enough.
Yeah.
New Englanders wanted them all week. Now, when you came to 38, what was that, early 70s?
Yeah, it was 19. Good Lord. I should have this off the top of my head, but I've forgotten over the years. I was 23. So that was a while ago. It would have been in the 70s, like the late 70s.
And
yeah.
so when you got there, were the Stooges already the New England phenomenon?
They were there. I mean, in those early days where I was hired as a booth announcer. That was the first thing that I did. I mean, I literally sat in a little room, and there, believe it or not, there were 4 or 5 of us, and we all had shifts, and our responsibility was also to keep the law. and we had a microphone in the booth. It literally was an audio booth, and we would record all the programming and all the commercials that came, that we would have to check it off on the log that it actually had run. And that would be signed by whoever's on duty, the engineer on duty, and then for the FCC file. So we were responsible for keeping those logs, and they had a little, obviously a little monitor in there. So we saw all that. And then of course we would do live IDs and the live commercial breaks. In those days it was available at Zayre's, that kind of thing, or available at Allen Hope, $9.99 at Allen. So that lasted for probably, I say 2 or 3 years before finally it was put on audio tape. And then we went down to one announcer, and that was me, fortunately. And from there, I was put on the air, and we started to do a lot of commercials. The first thing that I did on the air was commercials and promotions for F Troop and Hogan's Heroes. In fact, it was, they used to bring in some of these old stars from Hogan's Heroes. Bob Crane came to the studio one day, and Bob Crane, one of the bits was he was going to throw pie in my face, and he did. He actually threw pie in my face. I was dressed as an F Troop guy, and he was going to throw pie in my face because there was this competition between these two big shows on TV 38, which was F Troop and Hogan's Heroes. So it was pretty wacky.
And so with the Stooges, I remember they were everywhere. Kids loved them, adults loved them. I would meet middle-aged men who could quote dialogue. From
I don't know about women. Women didn't like them very much.
There were fewer women, yeah, but I've known a couple of women who did like them, but it was mostly a male thing.
That was a big thing. We used to talk about that all the time. That this was always a male thing. And in fact, we used to get letters from. Oh yeah, we used to get letters from women who were, just appalled at the violence and then the fact that they were tweaking each other's eyes or
Oh yeah,
place of each other's heads.
A quiet New Year's Eve at home, happy as can be, right? But don't you wish she enjoyed the things you do?
What do you mean? She likes movies and she loves sports.
But what about...
Oh, honey, can you turn that, please? I hate the Three Stooges.
Try to imagine what life would be like if she loved the Three Stooges.
Why, you numbskull. What are you doing? Spread out. I love this stuff.
Oh, honey, what's going on with you? What's wrong?
I'm warning you, Mo. I may be a porcupine, but I love these guys.
Honey, are you all right?
Angry mothers used to protest and picket theaters and TV stations if they were showing the Stooges because they were having such an adverse effect on the kids. Kids were poking.
So they didn't have universal appeal, I guess, is what we're trying to say. Certainly not among the sexes.
Did any mothers ever send angry letters to 38?
Well, again, I used to that show Ask the Manager. We used to get a lot of letters about it. And the only angry letters about the Stooges I remember were again, where's Curly? You're not showing all the Curlies. There's too many Shemps, and what's this Curly Joe stuff? I mean, they were really upset about the fact. I mean, a lot of people out there, the real Stooges aficionados, would just rather have preferred that we aired only the episodes that had Curly in them and not the later episodes with Shemp.
Yeah, I find that when I meet the real Stooge aficionados, they start diving deep and they're talking about how great Larry is.
That's right. Oh, that's relatively a new phenomenon now with the Stooges, I think. What a genius Larry was.
Yeah, the quiet genius of Larry.
The quiet genius, right? Well, yeah. I do think that they certainly were underrated in terms of the creative aspect of their comedy. And because people kind of always have dismissed them, early on at least, as these slapstick comedians that were just punching each other, falling down, and throwing pies in people's faces. But there was a lot more to them than that.
Oh yeah. Whenever you meet somebody who is, you know, a real film buff, and they're talking about Chaplin and Keaton and the Marx Brothers, they don't want to hear about the Stooges. The Stooges are considered kind of like a garage band or something, you know.
That's true. Yeah.
But yeah, they had this hold on New England. And I remember my teachers would yell at us if we were, you know, imitating the Stooges. You know, we couldn't stop. They had us hypnotized.
A tarantula!
It was,
there was a lot of that going on. And again, that's why I think a lot of women didn't like them, is because especially their children were walking around, you know, putting their eyes and putting their fingers in other kids' eyes and all, you know, all that stuff that the Stooges used to do.
hitting each other with 2x4s.
That's right.
And then being surprised when your buddy was flat on the ground with a concussion.
Larry the Cheese.
Yeah. I had a theory that they became so beloved because they were somehow attached to the Bruins and the Celtics and the Red Sox. It was always like these sports games were being played, and the Stooges were either right before or right after. So you were drawing in sports fans and creating Stooges fans by default almost.
Well, I mean, again, you have that predominantly male audience.
Yeah.
That kind of really liked the Stooges and loved the Bruins and the Red Sox. I think there's certainly a lot more female fans now of all sporting teams than there used to be. But I don't know why I say that, because I think it's true. That's why I say that.
Now, with as Channel 38 started to change in the 90s, I guess, was there still that much attention paid to the Stooges Marathon?
No, and I think honestly, no. There was a cadre there that later on, I say late, I don't even know what TV 38 is now. It's a bowling alley, or they hang meat in it or something. But in the days when it was really something, in the latter part of that era, that there were people that kind of spurned the Three Stooges as being beneath our programming. But there was also a very strong contingent, myself included, who argued for them constantly. And, you know, when we did the marathon later on, when we did Three Stooges marathons, I don't believe they were part of our schedule, but they literally had left most of our schedule, and now they were just allocated for that particular purpose, special programming on New Year's Eve and the like, summertime programming too.
I also remember towards the end of that Channel 38 heyday, it seemed like for a few years in a row, it was the exact same marathon. It was the same bits.
Well, I think when probably Henry Dane had left, if that's true.
Yeah,
Henry had left because Henry took it very seriously, and he loved the Stooges, still does to this day, and he put a lot of thought and a lot of effort into the interstitials, as we call them, that went between the Stooges shorts on the marathon.
What did you ever feel any competition with the other marathons? Because I remember I think Channel 5 used to have they would put the Marx Brothers against the Stooges. I think they tried that a couple of times.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it possibly did. Yeah, but now they're, in those days it wasn't a 500 channel universe. I mean, you had what, 5 or 6, and then cable was just starting to get up. So maybe 7. So there was plenty of audience to go around in those days.
Now, did you ever stay up all night and watch all 6 hours?
I've stayed up all night, but I wasn't watching the Three Stooges. But no, I did in a lot of years, like a lot of people did. Apparently, they kept it as background. That that a party would be going on, and the TVs would be on in the house as background to the party.
That's
People
true.
were having a good time, and every once in a while they would stop and check out and see, Mo smashing Larry over the head with one thing or another. But I think a lot of people just thought it was part of the merriment of New Year's Eve. It was just something that it's kind of like a roaring fireplace. You just it was there.
It's the fish tank in the corner of the room.
Exactly, but it was entertaining. I mean, people found themselves watching bits and pieces of it as they walked through the house.
Oh yeah, if you got bored with your party guests, you always had Mo and Larry to turn to.
Right. Get a fight with the hostess. Just go and watch a little Three Stooges.
And write a letter to ask the manager while you're at it.
Right. Yes.
Now, I guess for the Film Detective on New Year's Eve, we'll be showing some Stooges and I think some Groucho Marx episodes. We're going to mix it up a little, but there will be a heavy Stooge presence. So yeah. I'm looking forward to that. Now, you've done television, you've done radio, you've done all sorts of broadcasting. What do you think of this new era, these streaming platforms that allow you to watch the Three Stooges on your cell phone? How does that grab you?
I think they're fantastic. I mean, they're fantastic. I mean, and without commercial interruption. I mean, that's literally in the Movie Loft what we were up against once cable came in. So, which is why the breaks got fewer. They got longer because you had to have the same amount of commercials, but they got fewer, so that we interrupted the movie far less. I mean, people my age will remember that during the 1970s and the early 1980s in television, and before that, during the 60s, they'd cut these movies up into 5 to 7 minute breaks. It's almost unheard of to think of watching a movie like that now. That you watch these movies and then suddenly sometimes in the middle of somebody talking, if the editor wasn't doing their job, that they would break for a commercial sometime. And then it would come back up again, and you get 5 or 7 minutes more of the movie, then bang, in for another 2-minute commercial break. It was really hard to keep watching a film and really enjoying a film with that level of interruption. So one of the things we were talking about, one of the reasons we started the Movie Loft to begin with, I said, look, let's cluster these commercials. Let's put them together. And at first they said, oh, we can't get away with that. But then people began to warm to the idea until we got to the point where, we were doing almost 8 minutes of commercials sometimes. And we would put, in order to get around not around, that's not fair to say, but you're supposed to have programming. You have to have programming. We used to. I don't even know if you have to do that anymore, but the FCC demanded, or the NAB code at least, demanded that you have programming and you couldn't interrupt anything any longer than, I think, 4 minutes. So in order to avoid that, we put information and what we thought was entertaining stuff that I would come on and talk about the movie they were watching. And then we'd go to some other commercials and then we go back to the movie. But at least then you would get a good 20, 25 minutes of the movie. So we interrupted only 3 times. And that was groundbreaking because nobody had really done that before, just interrupting. And commercials were the lifeblood of local television. You had to have them. They still are. And but in those days, 5 to 7 minutes, they used to cut these films. So the whole reason for the Movie Loft originally was to lengthen these breaks so that to provide program material so that we could actually lengthen the breaks and interrupt the movie less. I think we got down to 2 breaks, in fact, at one point.
For our viewers who may not be from Boston or may not remember the Movie Loft, let's talk about that for just a little bit. When did the Movie Loft start? Because I remember the big deal about the Movie Loft was, it would be the New England premiere of The Deer Hunter or Annie Hall, so in my mind, I associated with late 70s. But tell me what was the time frame of the Movie Loft and your involvement?
Well, it was late 70s and early 80s that we started. And then, of course, we went for almost 18 years, I think 17 or 18 years, right up through. Eventually all the movies were pulled off of local television because of the fact that cable was showing the movies unedited, and they were prescription. I mean, you just paid a subscription, and then you could watch the movie. It's still like that today, of course, and you could watch the movie unedited and uninterrupted. And local stations couldn't compete with that in terms of film. But I always loved movies, and I always wanted to do something with movies. Now, Frank Abreuch was doing the Great Entertainment on Channel 5. You mentioned Channel 5 and the Marx Brothers. He was doing it. Great guy, Frank Abreuch. He and I became great friends. We used to play racquetball together, in fact. And he was always a wonderful man. But he used to dress up in a tuxedo. Yeah, he had a lot of class,
While playing handball?
Yeah, like sometimes. Yeah, well, maybe just the bow tie when he was doing that. But no, but he was really, you know what I mean. The presentation was a more sophisticated presentation. We had a loft. And I dressed in sweaters and jeans half the time. And
if I remember, Frank Abreuch's program on Channel 5, they tended to show movies that were a bit older, maybe Fred Astaire type films from the 40s and 50s.
Yeah, they did. Generally, most of them were black and white. That's a pretty good observation. And we started out there too, but then very quickly, our movie library was one of the biggest in New England. It was a huge movie library. And in those days, of course, it was all in 16mm film. So I remember we had this entire warehouse, this huge warehouse with just racks and racks of these. It's hard to imagine that now because, of course, with digitization, you need so little space to keep all of these things. But in those days, my God, there were just huge racks with all of these films. But when you love movies so much, and I would walk by, and they were all scrawled with a magic marker on that said, The Grapes of Wrath, Citizen Kane. They were all in these oblong cardboard boxes, and I just got a thrill just walking through there. I remember that as I'm talking about it now, how much I really said, "Oh, I want to see that again. I want to see that one again. Oh, I want to see." And it was great, I was kind of a guy that went through the TV guide and went down the list of the TV guide to see what movies were on. That's the only thing I cared about on the TV guide was what movies are and when they're going to air, And I remember doing that. And then came along, then came VHS, and Betamax machines came along. So you could actually program them and catch those movies when they were on TV. That was fantastic. And the idea now that you can pick out any movie that you want and watch it anywhere you want is pretty amazing. It's pretty extraordinary. And kids today don't know how good they got it.
Hey, can you move aside so we can see that nice picture behind you of the Movie Loft? That's
that right there. Yeah, he's a handsome guy. That guy. I don't know who he is anymore, but look at him. Look at that guy.
Good evening, I'm Dana Hersey. Tonight, a very special Christmas Eve presentation here on TV 38 Movie Loft. Our feature, The Greatest Story Ever Told. Outstanding cast this evening, including Max von Sydow, Charlton Heston, Carol Baker, Angela Lansbury, Claude Rains, and Van Hepburn.
Yeah, that was, what was that, mid-'80s?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's the great TV 38 logo.
He's bronzed and... it probably wasn't wise to wear white pants that day. I think those are chinos, actually. Chinos.
I think you're wearing white bucks like Pat Boone.
It looks like it too. Yeah, I have white tennis shoes on it. Yeah, something like that. I don't know. And these other ones, actually, these are, posted. This is actually my studio here, and we have a bunch of these pictures up here. But I used to dress up for the promotions of these things, so. That was Dracula, and I think over here we've got, Groucho. Yeah, there's Groucho. Yeah. So that's me. That's Henry Dane did that. Henry Dane was always dressing me up. Right? Always, yeah. Some crazy promotion. You know, he put me in a cart pulled by a chicken once. In fact.
Oh, I've
That's
seen
true.
that. He showed us that clip. Yeah.
Yeah, he's very proud of that. You know?
Yeah, yeah. Now what was interesting about the Movie Loft too is that prior to yourself and of course Frank Averouge in his tuxedo, most of the hosts were hosting horror movies, so they would come out dressed as some kind of a character.
That's true.
I remember
Elvira for one, yeah. I mean,
I
sure.
remember on also on Channel 5 there was a character known as Simon, who was dressed up as kind of an Edgar Allan Poe kind of a character.
Didn't you wear a leather hat? I should know, kind of a leather cowboy hat. Or something.
That might have been the Ghoul. There was a character known as the Ghoul.
I know you're right about it. That late night show they used to call it.
Yeah.
And,
the Ghoul was on Channel 56, hosting creature feature type things.
Wasn't there Feep too? Wasn't there?
Oh, that was way long ago. Yeah,
Feep, yeah.
Like a little Martian. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah,
yeah.
But before the horror movies, actually, there was Dialing for Dollars. I mean, that was a big thing that I think Channel 7 did, this Dialing for Dollars. And that was they interrupt the movie in between these commercials to see if you could win some cash. And then
they call you at home.
They call you at home. And if you're watching the movie, I've got $25 for you. That's right.
Well, we ought to start doing that with the Film Detective. We'll send somebody a text, and if they're watching the movie, I don't know. I don't think we can give away money on the Film Detective. That might be pushing it, but not a bad idea.
I think you can give away money anywhere. Frankly,
I don't know if
give
we
away
have
money.
I don't know if we have money to give.
Well, that might be the problem.
But when we do, that's an idea.
When you do, yeah. I think people love that kind of thing. I mean, I really do. I think that
it's audience engagement.
There's a lot of retro audio engagement. You're right. Yeah.
Call them at home.
People like the retro stuff now.
Yeah, well, we try to recreate some of that Movie Loft atmosphere with you when you record some of the promos for us and intros to some of the movies. We haven't been able to do as many as I would like, but those are a lot of fun. But what I miss is that stairwell with you walking down the stairwell, and sometimes you would sit on a wooden crate. You would do that too back in the old days. There was a wooden crate.
Oh, absolutely. That crate was actually called the Dead Celebrity Crate. And the reason it was is the crew, anytime a celebrity died, they would put the celebrity's name on the crate. And it became known as the Dead Celebrity Crate. Now, nobody ever knew that, but it was. No, we had a piano in that set. And the spiral staircase. That spiral staircase right now is out in my woods out here. And it was used because we went from 38 to channel not 25 at one point. And for a year or so, I did the show over there. A different title of the show, I realize it wasn't much of a different title as I remember, but so the whole set came with me, and then when they broke that down, it was in my barn. The whole thing was in my barn, and when I moved from the house that I had the barn with, we had to move everything out, and the only thing I really ever kept was the spiral staircase. And to this day, the spiral staircase now is in my woods. And in fact, I just had a conversation with my wife about getting rid of it. I just talked about it. Yeah. So somebody was working on the property and came down and said, that metal's worth a lot of money down there. You want me to, I can get rid of that metal. So I literally asked John, I said, you know what, I should have the guy take that away because I'm tired of looking at it in the woods, But I couldn't get rid of it. The point is I just couldn't, I had to carry it with me all over the place,
What kind of condition is it in? Is it getting pretty old?
It's a steel spiral staircase. I mean, you can't. I mean, a tree fell on part of it. So one of the railings, and I think it collapsed one of the railings. But you could easily fix that if you wanted to. No, that could be resurrected. That definitely could be resurrected.
Birds are not nesting in it.
Oh, I'm sure birds are nesting in it and other things, other creatures, raccoons, squirrels, you know. There's everything.
Now, yeah, that stairway was it was an iconic piece of the Movie Loft, and I also remember there was some kind of it was almost like a music stand, and there would be photographs on the music stand. There might be a picture of John Wayne or whoever was the star of the movie. And
there was an easel. Yeah, there was an easel on the.
Oh, okay.
There was an easel on the set. But I mean, that set was enormous, I mean, it was for a television set. It was huge and just kept getting bigger. And in fact, in the early days, when they first designed that set, there was actually a wooden floor that they would put down in front of the spiral staircase and the landing. So they would literally put this wooden floor down. But what happened under those big Klieg lights, they were hanging out, all the boards warped. So I'd be walking on these boards and they'd be lifting and they became very noisy. So then they tried putting a rug down on top of it, which seemed pretty silly to me. If you put a rug down, why do you need the lumber to begin with? So eventually they took the floor away and they put a rug down, and it was one of these rugs that had, looked like from on TV from 30 miles away, it looked like, wooden floor.
So that set was built. What else did they use it for other than the Movie Loft? Did
Nothing,
they do anything
just
else?
the Movie Loft. Yeah.
Just the Movie Loft.
And actually, well, let me say, I used to do a show called Movie Loft and Company. And although later on there was a different set built for that, we used that set as part of Movie Loft and Company. And Movie Loft and Company was really, a show about interviews. I used to interview Hollywood stars all over the place. And every weekend I would be either in Los Angeles or New York, interviewing these people on movie junkets. And that's another, the stories there are unbelievable.
We'll get to those in due time. Maybe next year we'll do a bunch of those. I was going to ask, what are you doing on New Year's Eve?
Something that is yet to be determined, but what has happened over the last, I would say 3 or 4 years now, we used to get together with friends and we used to have a, rockin' party. And then it always winds up in front of the TV watching the ball drop and, and now we don't do that anymore. And we normally stay home and we care for my son and my daughter's children so that they can go out and have a rockin' New Year's Eve. I think that's the circle of life, is it not?
Well, the other circle of life is you could tune into the Film Detective and watch the Three Stooges.
Oh, I will be doing that. I can guarantee you I'll be doing that.
That's the real circle of life there.
That's a real circle. Absolutely right.
You cannot avoid the Stooges. You come in with the Stooges, you go out with the Stooges.
I love the Film Detective. I watch the Film Detective all the time. I think it's great.
Hey, Dana, will you do me a favor?
Sure.
Sign us out. Give us one of those vintage Dana Hersey sign-offs, and we'll put this to bed.
Talking about TV 38, the Movie Loft, and the Three Stooges Marathon, I'm Dana Hersey. Good night.